So kind of bringing it back full circle, maybe this was a topic I've been meaning to speak to you about, is the topic of death. And
Yeah.
we earlier spoken of your experience in hospice and palliative care. Pretty much every topic that you've talked with about, in this meeting of ours connects with it in one way or the other. So maybe to begin with, what have been the most powerful insights for you personally? And then maybe also later we can connect with what have you observed or what would you advise to people in general?
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember if I had mentioned to you how, because I wrote a story about it recently about how when I moved to San Diego and how I was walking down the street and I was just having literally, I mean, some of my best conversations I have are literally with myself. Just say that out loud.
That's
Everybody
nice.
knows it. I talk to myself all the time. I am my own best friend. And I think we all are typically, like we always like kind of like check in with ourselves. And I was walking down the street and I said, what is my purpose in San Diego? Like, what am I here to learn? And this voice very clearly, that wasn't me, said, "You're here to learn about that." And I was like, okay. I don't really know how to take that, but I'm here. So all right, let's see what happens, and so I knew very early on of me moving here that that's what I was here for, not realizing that it would take the shape of losing a lot of very near and dear friends, which I think, wait, did you start Fema Shakti
Yes, that's where we met,
with
which was a
Jonathan?
yoga program. Yeah, I know I never met Jonathan
You
actually.
never met him. Okay, I couldn't remember if you had met him or not, but yeah, it was, I had worked with the founder of our yoga school for maybe like a year and a half before you got there. And yeah, he died at the age of 44. He had a massive heart attack. And he was probably like the fourth person that I had lost within like a couple years. And that one was the absolute hardest because he and I were like brother and sister. It was as if like I really looked to him as my brother, like my older brother that had all of this knowledge and all this information. And him and I would like follow him around with like a little puppy dog, and I would just like eat up every single word that he said about yoga and the way that he saw like the potential in each student. And I was just enamored with him as a human being. He was so kind and so gentle. And yeah, he died. He just dropped at the age of 44. And that death was so shocking to me. And it was, that grief was intense. And I think it was 3 months before we lost a student. A student had a heart attack. And then within a year, we went to India to visit Jonathan's teacher, Suresh. And then within a month of us coming home, his teacher died of a massive heart attack. Then I lost my dear friend, John, who was my earliest mentor here in San Diego. He had cancer and lost his battle with cancer like 3 years ago. And that's just in my personal life. And, I always wanted to work with patients along the lines of death. It was either like with birth or with death. Like on one end of the spectrum, it's at the beginning or it's at the end. And in my schooling, I just felt more like, and also I heard that voice, right, telling me I was here to learn about death. So I immediately wanted to work with hospice and palliative care. And so I wound up working with the San Diego Cancer Research Institute, doing my externships for my graduate degree in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And I stayed there for about a year, and it was incredible what I was able to be a part of there. Like the very first patient I treated, it's like, when you're in a situation where you're at a cancer center, everyone is facing death in some way, right? And every person is facing themselves or trying not to face themselves in some way, So it was very, very interesting. Everyone was on a different level of their spectrum of like where they were on their journey. And in that time period, I was there for a year, and I definitely, there was a couple patients I really struck a tight bond with that passed. And then so that was a beautiful, beautiful place to be. And in that work of working closely with patients that are like literally staring, death is like right there. It allows for me as a practitioner to just hold that space for them. And when you are in a position like that, nothing else matters. There's not one thing that matters. It doesn't matter how tired I am, if I have menstrual cramps. It doesn't matter if I'm extremely hungry. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. It doesn't matter. And every now and again, you're tired. You're like, oh man, I wish I felt better going into to treat this patient or whatever the case may be. But then you're in the moment and you're like, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters except for this time with this person in this space. So talk about perspective. Like, it puts you into this alternate state of perspective where whatever it was that you were complaining about or thinking about in your life, you don't even remember afterwards, because you walked up to the door and you sat there with the person and you sat in those emotions and you sat in that state with them, and you held that space right next to them. Then it's like you forget all else that was there before. All of it is gone. And it's amazing. It's an amazing gift and an amazing experience. And, working a lot with a local group here, Integrated MD Care, and I do in-home treatments a lot. So I go into patients' homes and I treat them there. And, walking in, I had this one patient and he was really, really sick. He was in a hospital gurney in his living room. He was about like 60 pounds.
60 pounds, and he was in his living room. And I was there to treat his arm. He had some nerve pain going down his arm. And he had, I think it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he was in this bed because he had a lot of lesions on his spine and on his ribs. And so it was really painful for him to stand up and walk. And so I went into his home, right? I'm in his space, and I go in to see him, and the light that was coming out of his eyes was incredible. And you could feel the fire, the life inside of him. You could feel it, that he wasn't ready to go yet. You can feel it, and it, like, with the group, the integrative group, like, it was like the doctor, the nurse, myself, massage therapist. We all were like talking about this case and being like, yeah, he's just like, he has so much life in him left. And so from that moment forward, we all gathered around to give him the best quality of life that he could ever have again. And then one day I remember going to his house. I was treating him regularly for a while, and I went to his house and rang the doorbell, and he had a caregiver there full time. The caregiver would open the door, and I'm there, and I'm like, ring the doorbell. And I'm like, let's slow down in there. I hear stuff, but I don't know what's coming to the door. The next thing you know, he answered the door. My patient, 60 pounds, that was in a hospital bed in his living room, answered the door, fully dressed, completely like put together, walked himself to the door and opened the front door. And it was like the most amazing moment, because, you realize that, sometimes the way that we see someone, because someone could easily walk into that situation and be like, wow, this man needs to be put out of his misery, But when you connect to the soul and you see it, and we were like, nope, oh no, he's not ready yet. Or we all saw it. We were like, no, he's not ready yet. And so we all were like, let's just give him the best quality of life we possibly can. And so he had the best year and a half. A year and a half, he had the best quality of life. He went on trips. He was going out in nature. He was in his garden. He took up art again. And then he decided, okay, now I am complete. And within a couple of weeks of him making that decision, he was gone. Yeah. So it's an honor.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing such an intimate story. Yeah, I think this aspect of connecting with people and seeing if their work of life is done, do they feel that it's complete, or they still have to go? It's such an important component. And that, again, in traditional cultures is something that I feel like is mostly recognized. And I've heard this before, even as a kid, rather than just seeing what their state is.
Yeah.
So, and how has this kind of impacted how you live your day-to-day life? I'm sure it has changed your worldview and your philosophy. Do you remind yourself of certain things when you're not kind of centered in a certain frame of mind?
Yeah, definitely. primarily, I think it makes you more fearless. It just makes you more fearless, like, and it puts things into perspective where the things that you might complain about that might seem like that it was so like it's such an important thing to you, and that in the moment is like so fleeting, and really, in my life, it just makes me just not hold on to stuff, and just realizing like the impermanence of it all, and just releasing it as quickly as it comes. Sometimes like you really have to move through things and not hold on to it and not get stuck holding it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a big one, and the fearlessness in like living, and knowing that like with cancer is like a physical manifestation of repression, of emotion, and putting yourself last, or whatever the case may be. It's like this repression of emotion done over like systematically, like it's like a habit. It's like habitual. You keep not taking care of, keep not taking care of yourself, you keep doing these things, and then boom, then you have cancer, and so it checks you, you're like, well, clearly I have to be able to, first of all, not have to stick to me. I have to continue to move through things, not digest things so deeply in me that they become part of my DNA, So it just really allows you to just like hold things and release them, hold them and release them, because you realize that at any moment it could change. And
Right.
like, how do you want your moments to be lived? How do you want them to be strung together? How do you want them to show? Like, like if you had a hand of cards, like how would you want them to be presented? And then, and then you can like pretty much live unapologetically free in that way. And, and just have fun, Yeah, that's the main
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, we're talking about a fun topic, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of paradoxical how you mentioned, beautifully highlighted a few things. It's also been kind of my experience. I think we're already touching on that, and it's this fearlessness each time you integrate death. And in my experience, it almost seems like a spiral that you keep revisiting, and it keeps getting deeper and deeper. I can't say that I've become fully fearless. I'm excited to see where else it takes me, but there is clearly this fear. And I think the more free we are from the fear, the more we become in contact with our natural joy.
Yeah.
I used to question the teachers I had and it's like, oh, he has these crazy mind reading powers, or maybe someone can fly and stuff that should be possible. And now it's become less about that. Whether that's possible or not, I feel like that's less important. It is a recognition that you're already immortal, but that immortality is part and parcel of things in constant flux and transformation, which includes the character that you have right now, the body that you have right now.
No, seriously. Yeah. And it's really about adapting to change, and that's like the beauty of the seasons. And then that brings us all the way back to five elements, is like, and with the five elements in Chinese medicine, there's a season attached to each one, So it's like, it just shows like how change is definitely a huge part of it. We have to be able to flow with it. And the minute that we get stuck with one way of doing and one way of being, we have to be careful, because it can definitely lead to some negative physical side effects.
Mhm. But as you were speaking earlier, I feel like the victory from death or the fear comes from seeing, well, you can say you see the unreality of it in the way that the mind imagines it, because it's a continuum that continues. And the surrender comes in to still give up the kind of the human existence that you had, the story. And then it kind of looks like almost like a work of an art
Yeah.
that kind of concludes with that.
Yeah, definitely. With some of the patients that I've lost, they have definitely shown up to me after they've passed,
Mm.
and the one patient that I mentioned, the one that got up and answered the door that day, he showed up in coins for about like 6 months after he passed, I just kept seeing coins, and I knew it was him.
Mhm.
I lost another patient, a sweet woman, and she had another cancer patient. She was so sweet, and she really loved butterflies. And she would always talk about how when she left this realm, that she wanted to come back as butterfly. And yeah, and then like one day it was like in the middle of winter, and I'm walking to my car, and this butterfly is just like, and just right in my face. And I was so preoccupied with what I was doing, I didn't even realize it like dawned on me later on in the day. I was like, she came and visited me as a butterfly today. Like, how special is that? But yeah,
Right.
I mean, they come to you, and it shows you that the body is just the body, And I went to Sedona with my mother. She lost her twin brother a couple years ago, like 3 years ago, and was having a very hard time. Losing a twin is something that's very, 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 very challenging, because it feels like a part of you is now gone. And we went to this guy on the side of like one of the, I think it was like one of the vortexes or vortices out there. And he was selling some hats, and he just looked like a guy selling hats on the side of the road. And so we walk up to him, and my mom's with me, and he's like, I'm like, oh, I'm looking at some hats. And he's like, so, death is just like changing your clothes. You just take off the shirt and you put on a new one. And he just started speaking, and he was from India. He was, I don't know exactly what he was, but he had a bunch of books and everything there. And then he said this line about the t-shirt, and you knew that he was talking directly to my mother. Like, it was as if like he had connected to her soul, and
Oh, yeah.
this is the message for you, that the body is just a t-shirt, and he's still here. He's still around you, and then within like, I think the first anniversary of his passing, his birthday, their second birthday, that since he passed, he came as a swallowtail butterfly to my mother. It's literally sat on her shoulder and sat there for like at least like 10-20 minutes. This butterfly just came and just sat, and so it just goes to show, like, we're so much more than just this.
Right. Right. Yeah. And yeah, wow. The one reference that kind of along those lines that's been alive for me has been dream. Well, not, I won't call them dreams, but like visitations from one of my grandparents.
Uh,
It, and I was very close to her. And yeah, as I've honored that more and more, that has been a living connection for me when I feel like I needed it the most.
yeah.